everyone, I am Jake Steinberg, and this is Catch My Drift, the show in which I try to get you to see where I am coming from. But today I think we're doing something particularly drifty, because I'm not even 100% sure where this car is going, but I think what I've landed on today is, I'm afraid, that capitalism is killing superhero video games. And I feel like there's a certain kind of person watching this video right now. There's a certain kind of person that, like, whenever somebody like me invokes capitalism in a negative way, they're mad. They're mad at me. They're like, oh, you hate capitalism. Capitalism is why you have all the stuff you like, Jake. This show is about trying to see where I'm coming from. So wait till get to the end. Hold your comments to the end. Okay. Now, to understand my argument here, my point here today, I need you to understand these three main components. One, I have big nostalgia for bad superhero games. Two, superheroes got too big. Three, and so did video games. Okay, so these are my 3 points, and I think on that first point, I have big nostalgia for bad superhero games. I'm talking about games like Justice League Heroes, a comic book inspired beat 'em up that geniusly solved the problem of playing as Superman in a video game by just letting him be a character that you play as, and relaxing and chilling out. It is okay. You can play as Superman, an enemy can punch you and you can get hurt and it lowers your health bar. It's fine. Other games I really loved, Ultimate Spider-Man, this like fun cartoony open world Spider-Man game where you could also run around the open world and eat people as Venom. You got Hulk Ultimate Destruction, Marvel Ultimate Alliance, Superman Returns, based on the movie, had like really cool traversal abilities, thought it was awesome at the time. And then you got something weird like Marvel Nemesis, Rise of the Imperfects, king of the weirdo superhero games, okay? Every character is like a Shadow the Hedgehog version of that hero. They fight in these 3D environments. It's so freaking weird. I freaking love it. And I don't think the quality or the grand importance of these games in the video game medium is important to what I am talking about here today. I think what's important to understand is literally just that I, Jake, the person you see in front of you, has nostalgia for these games. And there was this like pre-MCU era where a bunch of random video games with superheroes would just pop up all of the time, randomly. And I think a lot of them would develop into cult classics. Marvel Ultimate Alliance is such a fun one for me to look at in particular, because I feel like it's this Avengers Endgame level superhero crossover, all these different Marvel superheroes in one game, you can play as them all, but it's before the MCU, so you get these versions of these characters that nowadays I think would be so much less familiar to your average Marvel content consumer, because it's like you've got this ubiquitous version of Iron Man in the comics and the movies and the games nowadays that is so heavily influenced by it's just Robert Downey Jr.'s Iron Man. But then you go back to Marvel's Ultimate Alliance and you get this version of Iron Man that's like, wait, you're not Robert Downey Jr. Tony Stark. You're a totally different guy. And I don't know, it's just kind of fun to see things like that. But then, of course, you enter this era where superheroes become very big. And I think that as superhero products become the biggest brand in entertainment, as the market power of superheroes goes up, you see that the attention to the superhero brand goes up as well. Like, you can't have as many of these weird little superhero games like Marvel Nemesis, Rise of the Imperfects on the shelves because they could confuse consumers or be like beneath the perceived standards of quality for the brand. So it's kind of crazy how if you look at Marvel games on Wikipedia, you can find this list, Marvel games on Wikipedia, and there's this chart and it's organized by date, and every year there's typically like a pretty solid chunk of Marvel video games. But as you approach our contemporary video game era, that chunk pretty consistently gets smaller and smaller until you get to something like in 2023, where Marvel's Spider-Man 2 is the only Marvel video game that came out in 2023. And the games that we know about coming in the next couple of years are fewer and further between. And they really, if you really look closer at these video games that are coming out now, they fall into one of two camps. They're either the prestige superhero video game title, which features like a heavy narrative focus and is mainly concerned with you inhabiting that superhero's perspective. You know, it's makes you feel like Spider-Man, makes you feel like Batman. That's the kind of game we're going for. And then the other type of game, what do we call this? The contemporary video game hotness, okay? But with superheroes, right? So we've seen this a bit with things like Marvel's Avengers, things like Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, that these are games trying to be modern video game hotness. They're trying to be live service games that keep making tons of money over time, like over long periods of time, years and years and years. And you know that these games, they're trying to be a Fortnite, they're trying to be a Destiny, they're trying to be an Overwatch. And with good reason. You know, last week, Sony puts out this presentation, and in it, there's this slide. And it pretty much says that half of the profit coming from the PlayStation Store, half of the revenue, comes from these big boy, forever making money video game titles. So when you have control of a massive brand, when you have control of the Marvel superhero entertainment brand, how could you not try to chase that kind of game? You only have to be successful once, then you hit big, baby. And it's so crazy because we actually see this happening right now with Marvel Rivals, a game that is pretty obviously inspired by and trying to be a competitor to Overwatch. And I think the purpose of all this for me is just to like show you how crazy it is, that you can see clearly how the superhero movie becomes a thing that should be taken seriously, and how that aligns with having more specific, more serious intentions with the superhero video game. Like, it's no coincidence that, you know, like before the MCU, I would say that the legitimizing superhero movies were the Christopher Nolan Batman movies, right? Those kind of broke into the mainstream in a way that superhero content had really not before. And again, it's not a coincidence to me that that happens with the Batman brand, and then kind of the first superhero video game that we see emerge into this new spot, this prestige spot in video games, is a Batman game. It's the Batman Arkham games. And then, of course, like after the first couple Avengers movies, you see Marvel Games starting to spin their wheels and say, okay, now we have to go after these superhero titles that are either going to deliver critical or commercial success, and oftentimes both, or they will be seen as beneath the brand. But the title of this video is not Capitalism Killed Superhero Video Games, because they're still here, they're functioning. And you can even point to things to fight my argument, right? Like the Guardians of the Galaxy game or Marvel's Midnight Suns. These are kind of like weird offshoot superhero video games that don't really fall into the two camps that I am describing. But I actually think in the cases of both of those games, I'm about to sneeze. In the cases of both of those games, they are great video games. I really love those video games, but they're not the big boys. They're not on that, one side of the chart that I showed you earlier. So I think that most people will see them as unworthy when it comes to the vision of the brand's future. And again, it's bleak because like I really love those games, but I think like you ask anybody in or out of games, in or out with the brand, like was the Guardians of the Galaxy video game a success? I think they would tell you no. Because it's not one of those two video games that you really want to be right now. It's not like the Last of Us style or Uncharted style prestige narrative title. And it's not the forever making money Fortnite Overwatch game. And as we wrap things up here, I don't want to appear as some kind of alarmist with like the state of the video game industry or anything like that. I started this video talking about my nostalgia, and I think that's what I'm most concerned with here. And I think like the prestige superhero title with that tight grip on the player's experience, and service titles that eventually die and just become completely unplayable. I don't think that either of these kinds of experiences are really what, and maybe I'm wrong, are really what people form like nostalgic connections to years down the line. At least not in the same way that I'm describing with my own experience, right? Because it's so fun for me. Whenever I want, I can revisit Justice League Heroes on the PS2. I can do that whenever I want, and nobody can really stop me from doing that, right? But same with Marvel Nemesis, right? Whenever I have the itch. But will I even be able to play Marvel Rivals in a decade? Probably not. Oh man, you know what's crazy? I actually have a better example. Like Marvel Heroes Omega. Do you guys remember that game? It was kind of like, how do you describe that? Like a Diablo-like, but Marvel Heroes. I really enjoyed that game. It was just fun. And that game got shut down. And like every so often I'm like, oh man, I'd love to go back to that, but I literally can't. And I think the inability to play these games in the future stops me from harboring nostalgic connections to them over time because I don't have those check-ins like I do with Justice League Heroes and like Marvel Nemesis and things like that. And I do kind of think this mainstream AAA narrative-focused superhero game is in a bit of a similar boat, but for different reasons. Just because I think when everybody has the exact same experience, when your hand is held through the entirety of those games from start to finish, it's harder to have a like personal connection with that game as an individual player. So I don't think the nostalgic connection is really there with those games either. So in conclusion, it just feels to me like more and more that the superhero video game, the only video games about superheroes that are going to be made are going to be ones that are designed to make money forever, or ones that just really desperately feel like they need to be taken seriously. And that is a bummer because I'm just trying to play weird superhero games and have fun. You know, superheroes in particular are, I'm a big comic book reader, and I love how superheroes are kind of designed to be reimagined, remolded, and reshaped over and over again. You get a different comic book artist, you get a different writer writing for Superman, writing for Batman. You do this several times over the course of a year, and you see like different shades of these characters. And I think that the way we are approaching video games right now doesn't let that beautiful part of these characters, of these comic book heroes, shine.